The first 100,000 is the most difficult. The threshold to the first 100,000 is actually so close, but it never seems to be achievable. In today's video, I will show you why it's so difficult. In doing so, I address the question of why exactly the first 100,000 is so important. I also show you why everything gets easier after your first $100,000. And finally, there are a few tips from my own experience. I myself have already completed the first 100,000 and would handle the whole thing a bit differently next time. Greetings everyone, and welcome back to Stock Miner. To start the journey to your first 100,000, you need a solid financial foundation. The first 100,000 is considered the basic framework in wealth creation. But what you need to do first is to build the foundation. The largest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, is built on a 7,000 square meter foundation and only therefore stretches 800 meters in height. Similarly, we cannot build a fortune if we do not have a foundation. The foundation, as boring as it may sound, consists of savings. A common sum is $10,000. So how to do that? One way is to live below your standard until you have 10,000 saved up. In order to achieve this as quickly as possible, you will have to do without a lot of things. Another good strategy is to negotiate a wage increase. What you get out of it will be saved additionally, because until now you got along with less. And by the way, in another video, I will talk about effective wage negotiation. Now the foundation is ready to build the base frame on it, the first 100,000. For this step, there are many possibilities. The easiest is, of course, to just keep saving if you have the capacity to do so. However, a savings rate of 10,000 a year, this would still take another 9 years. But you can speed up this process. One way is to put your foundation into investments, such as stocks. We have reached an age where we get close to zero interests on our savings account. The money just gets moldy in your account. Therefore, better make something out of it. You can choose 10 different stocks, for example, research them thoroughly, and if you are convinced, enter them with $1,000 each. With 10 stocks from different sectors, you diversify your portfolio and reduce the risk strongly. Keyword: asset allocation. With this strategy, it is possible to achieve higher returns than an index, but is associated with significant additional effort. If all the research is too time-consuming, you are better off with an ETF fund or index. These pre-packaged investment options are to a some degree resistant to wild swings in critical economic times. Here's an example. The S&P 500 lists the 500 largest publicly traded US companies. If the share price of a company loses value, it falls on the index and the next largest one slides up. The S&P 500 thus achieved an annual return of 8.2% over the last 20 years. In order to get your first 100,000 as quickly and effectively as possible, it is recommended to do both, save and invest at the same time. But what would that look like in concrete terms? A calculation example with the following assumption. Saved are $10,000, ready for the way to the first 100,000. Every year you save and invest another $10,000. The investment brings an annual 7% increase in value. Purely logically, and at a first glance, the calculation would look like this. After 9 to 10 years, the 100,000 will be full. Above you see what you would have paid, and below the proceeds of the value increase. In reality, the whole thing looks a little bit different, because after less than 8 years, 7.85 years to be exact, $100,000 are reached. This phenomenon is called compound interest, and believe me, compound interest has already made many people rich. According to this phenomenon, we can answer the question why everything becomes easier after the first 100,000. If we take this example further, the next target is $500,000, your first $500,000. Again, pure logically, this would take 5 times longer, so about 40 years. Pretty sobering, huh? Fortunately, it's only 22.23 years. In 22 years, you would have saved $220,000. Invested, it is now worth more than double. From 100,000 to 200,000, you only need 5.1 years, by the way. So you see, the compound interest slowly unfolds its effect. But the ultimate goal for most is not simply 100,000, but the glorious 1 million. But how long does it take to get a million? If you start today, you'll be a millionaire in 30.74 years. That's simple. You would have saved $300,000, and with compound interest, there will be another $700,000 on top. It takes you almost as long to go from 0 to 100,000 as it does from 500,000 to a million. For me, that's fascinating. So back to the question, why are the first 100,000 the hardest? Have you ever rolled a snowball down a hill in winter? What happens if you don't shape and compress the core, the foundation, strong enough? It breaks apart. Once a solidly formed snowball starts rolling, there is no stopping and it grows exponentially. Wealth creation works accordingly to this analogy. One of my tips is to really step on the gas at the beginning. Really dig in and try to build this foundation and this framework as quickly as possible. As you've seen, it takes a certain amount of time for compound interest to really kick in. Until then, however, full throttle. If you have 12,000 saved instead of 10,000 at the end of the year, I personally don't advocate that you invest the whole 12,000. Make a compromise. 10,000 I would have to invest. Instead of treating myself with the 2,000 extra, I invest 11,000 and then have earned the remaining 1,000 for a reward even more. Learn to balance a bit. Discipline, ambition, and always a healthy amount of self-reward. Secondly, no emotions. Those who begin to invest money are not accustomed to price fluctuations, especially when a sudden economic crisis hits and most of the stocks in the portfolio collapse. It needs an iron mindset. It is best to look at your portfolio as little as possible. If you invest, you have a long-term goal. Learn to keep a cool head and prepare to have to go through every imaginable economic crisis with your money. The storm will clear, and only the patient will be rewarded. Holding is the name of the game. And last but not least, dare. Just dare to start, even without experience. Open a trading account and enter with an amount that you can lose with a clear conscience. Gather your experience by flipping a few stocks, funds, or indexes. The beginning is always the hardest part, because you don't have the results yet to motivate you to keep going. So be brave. Thank you so much for watching. I will be very happy about a subscription, a thumbs up, or a comment. I'll see you soon, and bye bye.